Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's tutorial, this is another quick idea that I came up with that originally I wanted to have this as a wash rag, or you could use it as a trivet. Warning, 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 do not use this as a hot pad where you pull something hot out of the oven. There's holes, it will burn your hands. I am not responsible, your fault, not mine. Anyway, back to the tutorial. But in another tutorial that I had previously done, somebody had mentioned that these would make really cute placemats. And I was like, you know what? That is a very, very good idea. So that is what this tutorial is going to be. Placemats. These are super cute and easy, and you can come up with so many different colors and just, you know, all kinds of different designs, and you can use these for kids or holidays, whatever. Totally up to you guys. Go crazy with it. You're going to love it. So let's go right into what you're going to need. Now I about said hot pads, not hot pads. These placemats are made out of 3 double crochet clusters, so it does take a little more yarn than usual, so you want to make sure you have a full 120 yards, just any 4-weight cotton, 120 yards, okay? And then I used a 5mm crochet hook. Now, if you have a tighter tension, I would recommend to go up to a 6mm crochet hook, because when we start this pattern, it starts off the first round or two wants to turn into a little bowl, and it quickly does come out of that. However, if your tension is tighter, I'm afraid that it may be a little longer for it to come out of it, or it may not come out of it as well as someone with a looser tension. So I just go up to a 6mm hook if you have a tighter tension. Other than that, a 5mm should do ya. You can see my cat chewed on my crochet hook right there. Okay, so get yourself scissors, a needle to weave in your ends, and a stitch marker, and that is it. Your yarn. Cotton yarn, 5mm or 6mm if you're tighter. Needle to weave in your ends, stitch marker, scissors. That's it. Get your supplies together and let's get started. All right, so to get started, go ahead and get a slip knot on your hook. And as always, make sure you have plenty of tail to weave in, all right? Okay, so we're going to start with a chain of 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're going to come down and we're going to work a double crochet into that very first chain we just worked. So yarn over and come down in there and work a double. Now, what we're going to do, of course, I don't have a stitch marker right here when I need it. We are going to pull up our work, get that loop out of the way so we can see what we got here. So what we have is a 1, 2, 3, 4 chains, and then that double worked into that very first chain, right? So the 4 chains right here is going to count as a double crochet and a chain 1. So with my stitch marker, I am going to mark. So if you look at the top of your work, see, here's our working yarn right here. There's the top of that first double crochet that we just worked. Here's a chain, and then right here, right there, is our 3rd chain up. So what that is the top of what technically for this chain 3 is going to be a double. So what I'm going to do is just put my stitch marker right in there, and I want to make sure that my stitch marker, pardon me, is catching the top loop and the back loop, or the back hump, whatever you want to call it, of your chain. So all that's left is that bottom loop of the chain. Reason being is that just kind of gives us a little more stability when we slip stitch into it. All right, so technically what we have right now is a double, chain 1, double. Clear as mud, right? Okay, so what we are going to do to repeat on round 1 is we are going to chain 1 and double right back into that same chain space that we just double crocheted into. And now what we're going to do is we're going to repeat that until we have a total of 8 chain 1 spaces. So technically, how many do we have right now? 2. 1 and 2. So we need 8. So we're going to chain 1 and double crochet back in there until we have 8 chain 1 spaces. So right there is number 3. So I'm going to double right back in there. Chain 1, double crochet right back in there, and you just rotate your work as you go. And don't worry about this slip knot or the tail. We'll get that out of our way in a little bit. Chain 1, go back in there with a double. Now let's stop and see how many we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Chain 1, there's 6. Double crochet back in there. Chain 1, there's 7. Double crochet back in there. Chain 1, now that should be 8. So we have our 1 right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and there's 8. So we're going to come down and slip stitch right where we marked. I gotta get my tension. All right, get in there. And you can remove your stitch marker first if you want to. It's not a big deal. And just slip stitch right in there. And then you can pull this tail, close up that middle, and we will weave in that tail in a little bit. No big deal. So that is the end of round 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chain 1 spaces, and then that chain 3, that's a double. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 double crochets. Okay, that is the end of round 1, and you can take out that stitch marker. So we are slip stitched into that third chain up, right? So now we're just going to go straight into the chain 1 space. You don't have to work into the chain 1. Just put your hook right into that space, and we're going to work a little slip stitch. All right. Okay, so now to start round 2, we are going to start this round with what is called a beginning cluster. So basically what that is that we need to work our way up to work the normal cluster for the round, which I'll show you in a minute. But to work the beginning cluster, all we're going to do is chain 2, and then we're going to yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3 loops on our hook. Now this is technically trying to think of how to explain this. So this whole pattern is based off of a cluster that is 3 double crochet, right? Well, to be able to work that beginning 3 double crochet cluster, we need to be able to get our height. We need to get up, right? So that's what that chain 2 is for. That gives us that extra, I'm going to say fake post. Does that make sense? So like right here, you can see, let me grab a needle to point with. Right here, you can see that's the post of a double, and that's the beginning post of a double, and that's the beginning post of a double. And here is our fake beginning post of a double. So that's what gets us our height to be able to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook to give us our beginning cluster. So now we chain 2, jump to that next chain 1 space, and now we're going to work the actual 3 double crochet cluster. So we yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops on our hook, yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 loops on our hook, and you can see there's 2 posts. We need 1 more. Pull through 2. All right, so now we've got our 3 posts, our 3 beginning double crochet posts, and then we have 4 loops on our hook. So that's one of the other differences from the beginning cluster, is that instead of only having 3 loops, we have 4. All right, so now you just yarn over and pull through all 4. And there you go. All right, so now you just repeat that around. Chain 2, jump to that next chain 1 space, work the 3 double crochet cluster. 1, 2, 3, 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 2, jump to that next chain 1 space and work that 3 double crochet cluster again. I put lotion on my hands before I started, and I am having the hardest time keeping my tension with this cotton yarn. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 2, jump to the next chain 1, work that 3 double crochet cluster, 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 2, jump to the next chain 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4. Get me some slack here. All right. Chain 2, jump to that next chain 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 2. Right there's the last chain 1 space. Get in there with 1, 2, 3, 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 2. Okay, so now we are going to slip stitch to the top of our beginning cluster. So, where'd my little needle go? There we go. If you look, let me get this off. If you look, what we see right here, just the way this is setting right to us, right here, see that bar right there? That is the slip stitch. And then the little heart shape that bar wraps around, that is the first chain. Right above that is the second chain. Right above that, the bigger V shape right there, the top of the stitch that's bigger than the chains, that is the top of our beginning cluster. See how that one's bigger? Right into there is where we're going to slip stitch. So I'm going to skip the bar, the heart that the bar is on, the next chain, and then right into the top of there. I don't want, this yarn is really hard not to split. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to slip stitch just like that. And then to end round 2, we're going to slip stitch right into that chain 2 space. Just like that. Now I'm going to pull up a loop because I want to show you something. See how this is bowed up like, or bowled up like that? I like to say, like it looks like a bowl. Don't worry about that. It's going to come right out of that once we get more and more rounds worked on this, okay? See, you can kind of see just it wants to lay flat once you give it the what for is what I say. Anyway, all right, so that was the end of round 2. So we're going to move on to round 3. Alrighty, so for round 3, we are going to start with that beginning cluster again. So we start with the chain 2. There's our fake first post. So we yarn over. There's 2. And there's 3. Remember, we have our fake post and then our 2 partial posts. And only 3 loops on our hook with just that beginning cluster. So we yarn over, pull through 3. Now we chain 2 and then scooch that over, and we're going to go right back in there with our normal cluster. So yarn over, go in, pull up, yarn over, pull through 2. 1, 2, and 3. 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, and pull through all 4. Chain 2, jump to that next chain 2 space, and we're going to work a cluster, chain 2, cluster. There's 4 loops on our hook, 3 beginning double crochet posts. Pull through all 4, chain 2, go right back in there with another cluster. And I want to explain, like, I don't want anyone to get confused when I say beginning double crochet, because I realize that some people may get a little confused when I say the beginning cluster and the beginning of a double crochet. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. So we just did the cluster, chain 2, cluster. Now we're going to chain 2, jump to that next chain 2 space. So when I say beginning of a double crochet, let's kind of break it down for just a second. I know some of you are going to complain in the comments that I'm rambling, but I want everyone to understand what I mean by this. So when I say beginning double crochet, what is the steps of a double, right? You yarn over, go in, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. That's the first step of your double, right? So the second step is to yarn over, pull through 2. There's your double. So when I say the beginning of the post of a double, what I mean is just that first step, right? So I just wanted to make sure everybody, I should have explained that sooner. Sorry. Anyway, so we have 1, we need 3. So there's 1, 2, 3. 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 4, chain 2, go right back in there with our cluster. I'm going to go a little faster. 2, 3. Yarn over, pull through all 4. I keep getting tangled on my notepad and it's driving me nuts. All right, so that is what we're going to repeat around. Chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster into the next chain 2 space. Chain 2, jump to that next chain 2 space, cluster, chain 2, cluster. Chain 2, jump to the next chain 2. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and finish this round off camera, and when I come back, I will work my last cluster, chain 2, cluster into the chain 2 space, okay? So I will be right back. All right, so I've worked that around, and I have 1, 2, like I'm counting our beginning cluster as a cluster. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 clusters. All right, so now to end round 3, we're going to chain 2. And again, if you look, like mine's a little awkward right there. If we look, here's our belt, first heart, second heart, top of the beginning cluster. Slip stitch right in there. And then we're going to slip stitch into the chain 2 space. So just go straight in there with a slip stitch. All right, so that is the end of round 3, and you can see the bowl is wanting to come out a little bit more and a little bit more. Just the more and more we work this, the more it comes out of it. All right, so round 4, we are going to once again start with that beginning cluster. So chain 2, there's our faux beginning post. So there's 1, 2, 3. And remember, the beginning cluster only has 3 loops on our hook, not 4. So we yarn over, pull through all 3. Chain 2. Scooch that over and go right back in there with a cluster. 1, 2, 3. 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4. Chain 2. Jump to that next chain 2 space, and into the next chain 2 space, we're only going to work 1 cluster. So yarn over and go in there with 1 cluster. 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 4. Chain 2. Now we're going to jump to that next cluster, and we're going to work the 2 cluster, chain 2, 2 cluster. So yarn over, go in there. 1, 2, 3, 4 loops, pull through 4, chain 2, and go right back in there with another cluster. 1, 2, 3, 4 loops, yarn over and pull through all 4. This yarn, I'm telling you, is giving me a run for my money today. Okay, so what we have is our 2 cluster, chain 2, 1 cluster, chain 2, 2 cluster with the chain 2 in between. And that's what we're going to repeat around. So we're going to chain 2 into the next chain 2 space, 1 cluster. 1, 2, 3. Yarn over, pull through 4, chain 2. Into the next cluster, or to the chain 2 space, I'm sorry, we work the cluster, chain 2, cluster. You guys are going to get sick of hearing me say cluster today. Chain 2, scooch that over, go right back in there. 1, 2, and 3. 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 4. All right, so that is what I want you guys to go ahead and work around. You're going to work from where we just ended, you're going to work a chain 2, 1 cluster into the next chain 2 space, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster into the next chain 2 space, chain 2, cluster into the next chain 2 space, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster into the next chain 2 space. And you repeat that all the way around. Did not mean to do that. And I will meet you when we get to that last chain 2 space, okay? So I'm going to get mine done off camera and I will be right back. Alrighty, so I am back and I've repeated that around. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24 clusters. Remember, I'm counting that beginning one as a cluster too. All right, so now to end round 4, we are going to chain 1, 2, and again slip stitch to the top of that beginning cluster. So we have our belt, the little stitch right there. It looks a little smaller because it's a chain, but if you push that belt down, the slip stitch, you can see more of it. There's 1, 2 chains. Right there's the top of the first beginning cluster. I'm sorry, the top of the beginning cluster. I can't get my words out. Slip stitch into that. And that is the end of round 4. So to move on to round 5, we are going to just go straight into that chain 2 space. And once again, we're going to work the beginning cluster. So we chain 2, go right back in there with 1 and 2, 1, 2, 3. Remember, beginning cluster, only 3 loops. Yarn over, pull through 3. Now we chain 2, and we're going to go once again right back in there with a cluster. 1, 2, and 3. 4 loops. Yarn over, pull through all 4. Chain 2. Now we're going to cluster into the next chain 2 space. I'm going to go ahead and just do that without explaining it again. All right, now we chain 2, and now we're going to cluster into the next chain 2 space. All right, chain 2, get some slack. Oh, sorry about that. I didn't mean to bump my camera. All right, now what we're going to do is into the next chain 2 space, we're going to work the cluster, chain 2, cluster. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, scooch that over, go back in there, 1, 2, 3. And there you go. So this round again is pretty easy. We chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster. I'm going to go ahead and work that one more time with you guys. All right, so we just did the cluster, chain 2, cluster. So we chain 2, go into that next chain 2 space with a cluster, chain 2, jump to that next chain 2, four loops on our hook, I meant, sorry, chain 2, and then into that next chain 2, we're going to work the cluster, chain 2, cluster. So the only difference between this round and the last round is that instead of doing the one lone cluster into the chain 2 space, we're doing that twice. If that makes sense. Let me show you what I meant. 4 loops, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 2. Okay, so on this round, we had the 2 clusters into the chain 2 space, and then 1 cluster into the chain 2 space, and then 2, 1, 2, 1. Well, this round, we have 2 clusters into the chain 2 space, and then a cluster into the chain 2, cluster into the chain 2 twice. And then we have the 2, chain 2, 2. Clear as mud again, right? So go ahead and just repeat that around, and I will meet you at this last chain 2 space. Alrighty, so I am back and I've repeated that around. And I went ahead and ended with that chain 2, but I haven't slip stitched yet. But you should have 32 clusters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Good deal. All right, now we're going to slip stitch to the top of that cluster. Remember the big one, the beginning cluster. Slip stitch in there, and then just go straight into that chain 2 space with the slip stitch. All right, now we are going to work the last round of clusters. So once again, we're going to start with that beginning cluster. So chain 2, yarn over, go back in there. You know how to work it. Remember, it's only 3 loops, not 4. Chain 2, and then we're going to go right back in there again with a cluster. Now, 2, 3, 4 loops, yarn over, pull through 4. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to chain 2, cluster into the next chain 2 space 7 times. So we're going to have 7 lone clusters. So I'm going to just stay with you, okay? So I'm going to chain 2 into the next chain 2 space with a cluster. And if you guys can hear that backup beeper, they are working construction across the street, and they literally do it all day and all evening, and I don't have time to wait for them to stop. So if you guys hear it in the background, I'm sorry. All right, so now we chain 2, cluster to the next chain 2, pull through 4, chain 2, cluster into the next chain 2 space, chain 2, next one, 1, 2, 3, chain 2. How many do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. 3 more. 1, pull through 4, chain 2, cluster into the next. 1, 2, 3, chain 2, cluster into the next. Now that should be 7. So we have the 2 together, and then we should have 7 lone ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. All right, so now we chain 2, and into that next chain 2 space, we're going to work the cluster, chain 2, cluster. 2, 3, chain 2, scooch that back over, go right back in there with another cluster. And that is all we're going to repeat around. Chain 2, cluster, chain 2, into the next 7 chain 2 spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then into the next, you're going to work your cluster, chain 2, cluster into the chain 2 space. And you just repeat that around, okay? So I think you guys can get that. I'm going to work mine, and when I come back, I'm going to show you my work, and we're going to count how many clusters we have, and then we're just going to work a little border, and we're done. So I'm going to get mine done off camera, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back. I have repeated that around, and I ended with, let me show you, the 2 into 1 chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I haven't chained 2 yet, but let's count. I'm going to count my beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36 clusters. Awesome. Now we are going to chain 2 and then slip stitch to the top of that beginning cluster. Remember, it's the big one, the big stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch straight into the chain 2 space. And now we're just going to work a little decorative border. So all that's going to consist of for this last round, round 7, we're going to chain 1, 2, 3. Double crochet into the 3rd chain from our hook. So we have 1, 2, 3, that very first chain we just worked. Double crochet into there. And then we're going to slip stitch into the next chain 2 space. And then repeat that again. Chain 1, 2, 3. Come down, double crochet into that first chain. Lay that down, slip stitch into the next chain 2 space. Again, chain 3. Oh, this cone of yarn. Double crochet into the 3rd chain from our hook, or the very first chain that we just made, however you want to look at it. Just lay that down, slip stitch into the next chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3. Double, lay that down, slip stitch into the next chain 2, and that is what you're going to repeat all the way around. So I'm going to get mine done off camera, and I will repeat. I will be right back once I work into this last chain 2 space. Okay, so I will be right back. Alrighty, so I am back, and I have repeated that around. And I have my last chain 2 space right here. I'm just going to slip stitch in here. Chain 1, pull up a loop, and cut. And we are done. That is our little placemats. How awesome is that? And they're so just simple yet adorable. And you know, just the different color changes. Uh-oh. Yeah, I did. I was going to say, did I forget to work a double? No, I did. You know, you could change color every round and just come up with some really cute placemats. Or you can use these for trivets. Warning, warning, warning. Do not take anything out of your oven with these. You will roast your hand. Not my fault, okay? All right, well, I am happy to say that is that. That is this whole little tutorial. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Hit that thumbs up if you did. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you guys thought about these. And yeah, that's it. Subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss what's next. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.